Today, we're looking at a green ink in the Edelstein line from Pelikan Olivine. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, it would help me out a great deal if you check out the entire video. Hi, I'm an ink guy. If you like green inks and want to check out the playlist of other green inks, it's going to be linked here. There are 3 papers used to standardize some of the writing samples: Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. Now let's get into the first of those, 90 GSM Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and not a ton of shading at all. The extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some shading. Look at the word "the." Starts lighter, gets much darker, gets very dark at the E. Quick starts lighter, works its way darker all the way, and brown starts dark and works its way light. Very nice shading going on. 12 seconds to dry. The medium is darker than the extra fine, but nowhere near as dark as the stub. With no feather spread, halo sheen, there is little bits of shading. Like when you look at the word fox, it goes a little darker, or a little lighter to a bit darker. Lazy goes from darker to lighter. Same with dog, lighter to darker. So it is there. It's not really stand out and huge, but it certainly is showing itself. And 15 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both don't show very much color variation far left to right. There is some, but it's a little better in the writing. The smear for both show that if you were to smear while you were writing, you would be able to recover what was there. To make sure there's a range of experience with this ink, the writing samples are all done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then a Pelikan M805 with a broad nib is inked up, used for a day, and used to take the notes for this video. Now, let's take a look at the second writing sample done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting, very minor. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather, spread, halo sheen, moments of shading that are occurring, like the K in quick, the BR in brown, the X in fox, 16 seconds to dry. The medium is darker than the extra fine, just a tad lighter than the stub. With no feather spread, halo sheen, it does offer moments of shading, like if you look at what's going on in fox, it starts lighter, gets darker at the top of the F, lighter as it comes down, very dark into the X. Over starts light and gets dark. 20 seconds to dry, which is not bad at all on this paper. The scrubby for both shows no color variation, although it did look really good in the medium. The smear says if you were to smear this while you were writing, you probably aren't going to be able to recover it. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to be learned by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down, and it's immediately put in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see that it flees up, and we get this kind of brown leaning green that's pushing its way up, and a very dark blue line across the top. And that's pretty interesting in this green ink because I'm not seeing the yellows. Now the one on the right was let dry for 10 minutes before it was dunked into water. And it very much looks the same, except it didn't travel as far up. But that's about it. I don't know that you're seeing a tremendous difference and could really tell them apart if they weren't marked on the paper. So I'm not expecting a lot of resistance here. Up next is the third standard paper, 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. Now we get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no real shading. The extra fine is just a tad lighter than the stub, which might be enough. It has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer spots of shading. Look at how the is a little lighter to a bit darker. Quick goes from darker to lighter to darker. Brown, very dark, and on the second part of the W, quite a bit lighter. Over starts light and gets dark. Nice stuff, and 13 seconds to dry. Now medium is darker than the extra fine, about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. 16 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, although we did get it in the extra fine. The smear says you could recover this if you accidentally smeared it while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. Now, the smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, there is a blowout in the lowercase h, and the G gets quite fuzzy. I'm not sure that this would be the best ink to use in a note-taking situation, just to avoid losing something really precious as your information. That's not a surprise when you look at what happens with water, which is completely reactivating and starting to, you see some of the white of the paper coming through. And that was only 30 seconds that the water was put down. Now, pen flush is doing quite a bit more. You really see some white parts of the paper coming through, but I don't think you're going to need that here. And the 1/3 bleach solution that you definitely don't need completely obliterates it off the paper. The additional writing samples are done on different paper just to change things up and to give more experience with different papers. Now, the first of those is life paper. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade at all. The extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, some nice shading that's going on. Look at the word quick, where it goes darker to lighter to darker. Brown starts dark and works its way lighter. Very nice. I really like how this looks on this toned paper. 12 seconds to dry. Now medium is much darker than the extra fine, the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer moments of shading, like when we look at the O in over, the right side of the Q in quick. I don't count that because that for the J is probably where my finger was. The beginning of the F is probably not so much shading as it is my hand being lighter as the pen comes down. Not a ton of shading here with the medium, but there are very slight moments. 15 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us no color variation, although we do get some in the extra fine and the smear test. You could recover this if you accidentally smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, there is an average viscosity or flow of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Edelstein's Olivine has a viscosity of 2.1, making it average. It is just on the wetter side of average, but it is still a normal flowing ink. If you're interested in how the viscosity is tested and how the bell curve is made, then there's going to be a link to that video here. The next writing sample is done on Lavender paper. The only bleeding that we see occurring is here where the scrubby occurred on the other side, so I wouldn't really count that against them. Otherwise, no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. Very dark, nice standout green. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer moments of shading. Look at the word quick, goes from darker to lighter to very dark. Nice. Quick just seems to be the reference word for me. Over starts a little lighter, gets darker. 10 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the stub, which is darker than the extra fine. No feather spread, halo sheen, and no shading. 13 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us no color variation, although we do get it in the extra fine. The smear, you could probably recover this if you accidentally smeared it while you were writing. To find the average dry time, the writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper are averaged. They're then normalized and put onto a bell curve. For the inks tested, there is an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Edelstein's Olivine has an average dry time of 15 seconds, making it normal. The last writing sample is done on Franklin Christoph paper. These aren't bleed spots that are right here. That's something transfer from another paper. The only bleed we're seeing is where the scrubby occurred, which I don't count against it. Otherwise, we have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, some nice shade spots that are occurring. Looking at the, starts lighter, works its way darker. Quick goes from darker to lighter to darker again. 6 seconds to dry. The medium is darker than the extra fine, same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade at 8 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us no color variation, although we do get some in the extra fine. The smear, that I don't know, that's a crapshoot whether or not you're going to be able to recover that if you smear while you're writing. Instead of doing color comparisons to try and find inks that look like Edelstein's Olivine, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went with a nice orange ink from Blackstone, Wild Orange. In case the complement color or ink was not your preference, then down in the description you're going to find links to playlists for all of the different color inks here on the channel. So what do I think of Edelstein's Olivine? This is a very well behaved green with some decent shading, but I could always want more. I must be honest, I love the Edelstein line of inks, almost all of them. Almost. So what nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? In a very wet pen, it puts down a very dark green, really too dark for me, and I would prefer to go with a medium to dry flow fine pen because that's where we were really seeing some of this shading coming out. I hope you got something out of this video, and I'd like to invite you back tomorrow when we take a look at Iroshizuku's Chiku Rin.